From available historical accounts, Àwọlẹ̀, the cousin of the late Aláàfin Abíọ́dún, ascended the throne at the latter part of the 18th century. But as at this time, the excesses of both the royal household, chiefs, the Ilaris, that is the king emissaries, and the various princes had made the people and most of the vassal states grow weary of the tyrannical disposition of those that were at the helms of affairs. However, as it was his custom, the king was approached to name his enemy in order to vanquish whoever it was. An execution of the first king expedition. To this regard, Àwọlẹ̀ declared that his enemy was Baale of Àfọ, an act that would play an irreversible role in the fall of the king, with the much dreaded Àfọ Njá, the commander-in-chief, who assumed its position almost forcefully and was considered a great threat by the king, and would subsequently indeed rise to not only be a major contributor to the king's death, but, as aforementioned, bring about a fatal blow to the land of the Yorubas. Before this, however, after the Baale of Àfọ heard that war had been declared against its town, due to the fact that he offended Àwọlẹ̀ in the course of discharging his duty, which its overlord, the Owoni of Ife, commanded him to. He committed suicide to save his town, and his head was cut off to appease the offended monarch. But ultimately, tradition still demands that the king order the Are-ọna-kankanfọ and his army to lead an expedition, a bitter pill that eventually placed the king in a dilemma, as he is not only on bad terms with the new commander-in-chief because of Àfọ Njá's restlessness and fierce nation, but also some prominent chiefs such as Bashorun Ashamu and Owota, one of the powerful eshors in the empire. With this series of animosity thus going on, the empire was already at the verge of collapsing, and this was only a split hold until the inevitable happened, because the king was urged again to, as tradition demands, name another enemy that could raid and utterly destroy. And having revealed that Àfọ Njá is his most feared enemy, his advisors advised that he should lure him to attack Iwerele, a place that was not only a former king's maternal hometown, but also a place that was simply impregnable with the weapon of these days. This was an initiative to get rid of the Are-ọna-kankanfọ, as traditional demands that if it does not conquer a place within 3 months, it should do away with himself, that is, to die. Unfortunately, this secret information was leaked by private intelligence to Àfọ Njá in Ilorin, and to this end, he contacted his allies, Bashorun Ashamu and Owota, who were the head of the troop from the city, and Onikoyi, one of the leaders of the troop in the province, to stage a mutiny at the seat of the war. And so, to this effect, a mutiny was staged, and the royal messengers sent to give them order were all massacred, and the army subsequently marched to the capital. And after several weeks, the king was sent an empty calabash, signaling his rejection and automatic sentence to death. Àwọlẹ̀, already having the feeling that this would happen, did indeed committed suicide after placing a curse on them. With the king thus out of the way, the palace was sacked, and each perpetrator, like Àfọ Njá, started staging dominance of different territory in the empire. An act that saw the breaking up of the Yoruba nation into various territorial powers, and with all this in place, Àfọ Njá was now in power and on his way to both his zenith and doom. In this frenzy, he invited a Fulani Muslim priest named Alimi to Ilorin to act as his priest in some account, his potent charm maker. Alimi honored this invitation by bringing along with him some of the Hausa slaves who Àfọ Njá found useful as warriors. He also invited Ṣọlágbẹ̀rú, a rich and powerful Yoruba man, who quartered himself at the outskirts of the town. With this setting, different Hausa slaves started deserting their masters and flocking to Àfọ Njá, who in turn trained most of them to be soldiers and protected them from their various masters. What will later become a pain in the neck and will ultimately lead to a brutal end. In the wake of this, however, Ojo Agunbarabaru, one of Bashorun Gaa's sons, who escaped the massacre of his entire family, had already built an army in the Bariba country, with which he planned to annihilate all those that contributed in one way or the other to the destruction of his household. With this formidable army, he sacked Oyo, killed 10 of the chiefs, and in the final lap of his madness, went to measure up strength with Àfọ Njá at Ilorin, where he was eventually defeated after the myriads of chaos he had orchestrated. With this victory, a little cubit was added to Àfọ Njá's pride, such that even when Prince Mako ascended the throne and he did not send any congratulatory message, a deputation was sent to him to inform him that the new moon has appeared, that is, a new king has ascended the throne. He responded, "Let the new moon set speedily." Consequently, it was not long before Àfọ Njá became the ultimate power in the state. But ironically, his rise was just an indicator that his fall has come calling. The Hausa slaves whom he trained to become valiant warriors become known as the Jamas, but as they increased in numbers, their atrocities and brutalities also increased. They began to plunder the citizenry and carry out all sorts of heinous activities. Things became so rotten, but no one could muster up the courage to tell Àfọ Njá to cut down the excesses of those people. And eventually, Fagbohun, the chief of Jabata, who had the courage to do so, narrowly escaped death due to Àfọ Njá's displeasure in his observations. However, Àfọ Njá haughtiness did indeed made him so blind to the obvious danger the excesses of the Jamas posed to the existence of the state, that when he finally removed the veil from his face, it was too late. He thought he could bring them down with a wave of his hand, but it turned out to be a gross miscalculation, because by the time he eventually decided to put them down, he had offended all that could aid him in case there was fallout, except the Onikoyi. He thus sent a private message to the Onikoyi to help him in putting down the menace. But somehow, the message got leaked, and the Jamas, led by Anemi, attacked him. And when he realized that they far outnumbered him and his men, he was boxed on every side. He sent Bugare, his head slave, to solicit Ṣọlágbẹ̀rú's help. But lo and behold, he was treacherously forsaken by his friend at the most crucial point, and since he could not hold on to the Onikoyi's arrival, the great Kakanfo was brutally murdered. And it is even often reported that so much arrow and spear pierced his body that it was left erected. The fall of the great stronghold of the Yoruba people and the many wars such as the Mugba wars became a futile attempt by the Yoruba in protecting their land from this wild invasion. In essence, through the lens of this historical revisitation, one is made to see the ultimate roles pride, bravery, weakness, treachery, brutality, fierceness, and tradition plays in the rise and fall of the old Oyo Empire, and the effect and the role the Are-ọna-kankanfo Àfọ Njá action played in its downturn.